Let me welcome everybody to this important meeting. I certainly would like to welcome you on behalf of the Jamaica Tertiary Education Commission, chaired by the Honorable Sir Kenneth Hall, and the Commissioner, Mrs. Maxine Henry Wilson. I certainly wish to welcome all the members of the Diplomatic Corps with us this morning. In particular, the Dean of the Corps from the Dominican Republic, Ambassador Herman. Good morning. It's good to have you all. This is an important event in the context of the Government of Jamaica's Education System Transformation Program. And this morning, our conversation is about tertiary education, about securing quality in Jamaica's tertiary education system, and affirming and celebrating our partnership with your respective countries. All the countries represented here this morning have been grateful donors of scholarships and educational opportunities and cultural exchanges, and Jamaica is very pleased to have collaborated and to have benefited over the years. This morning, we want to talk about how we deepen that partnership. We want to share with you the structure and the mandate of the Commission. This will be principally done this morning by Sir Kenneth and Mrs. Maxine Henry Wilson. We're changing up the program a little bit. We're going to invite our former Governor General and esteemed academic in his own right, leading this process as we chart new pathways for tertiary education in Jamaica. And I'm going to invite to officially welcome you, Professor Sir Kenneth Hall. After that, we have breakfast, and then Mrs. Henry Wilson will share a little bit more. Please welcome Sir Kenneth.
Welcome to this, I would say, informal, but you cannot have dignitaries and have an informal occasion. So welcome to this meeting where we, from the Tertiary Education Commission, feel, members of the Commission feel, that we should share with you what we're doing at the tertiary level, and especially seeking you and your continued partnership. The background to the Tertiary Education Commission is part of a larger program of transformation of the education system in Jamaica. A commission was actually set up, and it made a report some time ago establishing a transformation team and a transformation program. But in that report, there was, if I remember, there were probably about 2 lines about tertiary education. And at the time, the explanation was the tertiary education would have to follow on the primary and secondary education. The result then is that a commission was actually established to continue that reform process, and that is what we are doing now. It is still in the formative stages, that is, the legislation is still to be approved, but for all practical purposes, we are allowed to operate as an agency within the Ministry of Education in Jamaica. Why then do we need a tertiary education commission? Because in Jamaica, we are very fortunate to have about 60 tertiary institutions for a population of under 3 million people. And there are other institutions who offer overseas programs, for example, from the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom in particular. So we do have several offerings at the tertiary level. What we lack, however, is a coordinated system of tertiary education, and in particular, a policy framework that would guide the work of tertiary education. Indeed, we have some institutions which jealously guard their autonomy. And so it is not easy for the government or anybody for that matter to tell academics that from henceforward this is the route to go. Instead, what we plan to do is to set a framework that would do three things. The three things which we have. We would regulate, that is, simply ensure that the quality, the standards of tertiary education are met by all the institutions, whether the institutions are located in Jamaica or offer programs in Jamaica. We will also ensure that all tertiary institutions are registered. One of the difficulties we have now is that programs are offered, degrees are granted, and there's no registration of the institution in Jamaica. Our aim is to ensure that all institutions are registered. And thirdly, we acknowledge immediately that while we have done a fairly good job at the tertiary education level, the challenges of the 21st century are such that we need to embark on a program of development. That is, we need to establish a new vision for tertiary education, new missions, and in particular, the way they operate. This we consider a very high priority. And in the process of doing so, what is one of the objectives that we hope to achieve is that our institutions will become much more responsive to the needs of the Jamaican population, to the needs of the tertiary education students, and in particular to the needs of both the public and private sector. Therefore, we want to have a platform where new investments, for example, in the Jamaican economy, will be provided with the skills, the competencies, and the knowledge base provided by our tertiary education system. And so we are seeking to make the tertiary education sector a partner in the development of this country. And finally, what we are hoping to, the method we hope to use in this process is one of partnership. That is, most of you will be aware that tertiary education systems, and I speak from the perspective of one who spent most of his working life in tertiary education, where you jealously guarded your autonomy. And unless you prepared the course, it was not satisfactory for the institution. However, what we wish to do is to infuse into our programs the notion that partnership is an essential part of excellence. And the partners we are interested in would be the government, the private sector, and the international community. And in the case of, as we will say later, as will be pointed out later, many of you represented here are already partners in that process, in the sense that you offer scholarships, there are research grants and so on. But we want to deepen that relationship so that the Jamaican tertiary education sector will see itself as a partner in this whole process of development with the support of the international community, and especially of the the countries represented at the diplomatic and consular level and the international organizations in Jamaica. So we welcome you this morning, and we hope that we'll have a chance to exchange some ideas. My colleague, the commissioner of the commission, Mrs. Maxine Henry Wilson, will speak to you in depth about the framework and some of the objectives and achievements of the commission. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen, also in the room this morning are representatives from some of your embassies and missions who work in education and in education initiatives, and so we want to welcome them this morning. We also have representatives from NGOs and foundations, international foundations working in Jamaica with us this morning, such as CUSO. We also have our local Chase Fund, and we also have members of the team of J-TEC also at breakfast with us this morning. So without further ado, I think it's now just about 8:25. Breakfast is served. Please connect, network, and let's have some breakfast. And after breakfast, we'll hear from Mrs. Henry Wilson. So thank you again for being here this morning, and let's now have breakfast. Jamaica's tertiary education sector has been growing rapidly. Never before have there been so many tertiary institutions operating in the Jamaican space, both onshore and offshore. With more choices for learners in the market, beyond the traditional universities and the network of teachers and community colleges, professional and vocational institutions, the Jamaica Tertiary Education Commission is bringing enhanced regulatory oversight to the sector. The Jamaica Tertiary Education Commission, JTEC, is one of the key components of the Government of Jamaica's Education System Transformation Program. It came into being in 2012 out of the recommendations of a 2004 Education Task Force report, which by happy coincidence was commissioned by former Minister of Education Maxine Henry Wilson. Mrs. Henry Wilson is now the Chief Executive Officer of JTEC.
Tertiary education, or what some people call higher education, is really the fastest growing service sector in the world, sometimes even outdoing tourism because of the demand for it. And some countries have made it their premier economic revenue generating activity, like Australia, one of their premier. So we are in a big league, and we're in a big league not only because of demand and the requirements of supply, but because it is also a highly competitive sector. And there are some assumptions around it, one of them being quality benchmarking. So you benchmark yourself against the best, because graduates of your tertiary sector are supposed to have what are called portable qualifications. They're supposed to be able to take it anywhere they go. If there is a doubt about the quality and how it is benchmarked, then your graduates are going to be at a great disadvantage. And it then sort of snowballs right down into all the other educational activities that you do. So that's the background, and people will tell you that we really are not clear about how many people our tertiary institutions are operating in our space, and that claims are made by some institutions which really are not valid. And so a part of our work will be one to set a standards framework. And we differentiate ourselves from UCJ, or we're differentiated from UCJ, because we are going to be at the beginning of the process. So any institution that wants to operate in Jamaica must register with us. So the vehicle for regulation in the first instance will be registration. And in order to be registered, it's not just a matter of signing up some forms, which will be on our register on our website, but which also require you to meet some standards. It's methodical, it's rigorous, it attempts to capture all the critical ingredients of tertiary education, ranging from faculty right through to structure of your governance system, right through the whole thing of how do you get your quality assurance, or how are you quality assured, things about your physical infrastructure, and of course now we do a lot of things virtually. But that does not supersede the availability of the appropriate infrastructure for teaching and learning.
We are very happy to be part of the pilot program for J-TEC, and as you can see, our layout involves an infrastructure that is very good for learning, and so we have library, we have an excellent laboratory, we have classrooms, and we have an excellent team of very qualified lecturers.
JTEC is mandated by Jamaican law to register, monitor, and measure the performance of all institutions which offer tertiary studies in Jamaica. The Commission is governed by a 15-member advisory board that reports to the Minister of Education, and that is chaired by the Honorable Professor Sir Kenneth Hall, former Governor-General of Jamaica and Principal of the University of the West Indies Mona campus. Sir Kenneth articulates an incisive vision for tertiary education in Jamaica.
I begin from the perspective that tertiary education is now an indispensable component of Jamaica's development going forward. My concept of the pillars of development includes the public sector, the private sector, and the tertiary education sector. For me, the tertiary education sector is both a facilitator and a contributor to the process. It is a facilitator in that it provides the human resources, the people who are going to work, equipped with the skills, the competencies, and all the values that we think that Jamaica should have. But it is also a contributor to development in terms of the knowledge which it develops and disseminates and applies itself. So I expect the tertiary education sector to be a contributor to GDP through science and the knowledge that it does and its applications. These are some of that's a vision. And so I share the UNESCO view that at no time in human history did the welfare of countries depend so much on the tertiary education sector. Up to this point, the tertiary education in Jamaica revolved around institutions, independent, autonomous institutions. Many of them had goals and missions of their own, and they contributed to national development. But the demands of Jamaica going forward will require a much more organized system of tertiary education. The question of the influx of overseas institutions, and indeed, if I may say so, new sectors within Jamaica, the private institutions, and there are now several of those. All of that is happening without a structure around it. And what J-TEC can do and was intended to do, and we are sure it will do it, is to bring order to these developments without standing in the way of growth, development, innovation, and change.
Looking ahead, the desired outcome is for a well-organized tertiary sector for the sustained delivery of high-quality tertiary education in both public and private institutions. In a well-regulated environment, tertiary students can pursue their education with confidence, knowing that their certification and credentials will be accepted internationally, a point readily supported by Jean Hastings, the Director of the Education System Transformation